Hello everyone. Today I am going to talk about TV tropes. More specifically, TV tropes that annoy me. So I've already talked about the TV trope of the dad being dumb, where it seems like every TV show ever, the dad is a bumbling buffoon and we're supposed to find it funny. Except for the fact that it has been done so many times throughout so many TV shows, and every single joke you could possibly tell with this trope has been done to death, and it is no longer funny, and hasn't been for years now. And there are so many of them. Any person who's a fan of cartoons could probably name you 5 off the top of their head. In fact, here's mine. Homer Simpson, Stu Pickles, Oscar Proud, Hugh Neutron, Richard Watterson. That's 5. Now, more recently, thankfully, the dumb dad trope has fizzled out at least a little bit, and it seems like they are branching out to a few different personality types for dads to try on. In live-action sitcoms, for instance, some dads fare more towards the quiet, no-nonsense type. Enter Mike Heck from The Middle or Murray Goldberg from The Goldbergs. Cartoons, on the other hand, they're more along the lines of, instead of the dad being dumb, the dad is a giant sissy, where it's the dad, he can't, loosen the lug nut on his car, or he can't open the door when it gets jammed, and his big, strong wife has to step in and help him out, And I get where they're going with this. They're trying to make it a reversal on the old stereotype of, the man being the big person, the big, strong person, and the woman being the damsel in need of help. I get it. They're trying to do a reversal on that for comedic purposes, and or just trying to tell their audience that, hey, it's normal for it to be the other way around, where the wife may be, the stronger one, and the man, may be may not be as strong, or may need help, if that makes sense. Because, of course, in order for a marriage to work, it's not just one person always helping the other. They need to help each other mutually all the time. So, one of the earliest examples I can think of this more sissy dad type would be Hugh Test from Johnny Test, if any of you remember that rather interesting show. So many whip cracks. Anyways, so Hugh Test, while he definitely wasn't super girly, he definitely had his moments. However, more centrally, his character was just, a neat freak, stern, stay-at-home dad, where, he was the one who would stay at home and clean the house and cook the meals, and his wife was, the one always out at work. And he definitely had a stern side to him, he could get very strict with Johnny, when he would act up. But at the same time, he did have his more feminine moments, let's call them. And perhaps they got more exaggerated as the show went on, Flanderization and all that, though I don't really remember. And the reboot of Johnny Test on Netflix that debuted last year, I believe, I watched a couple episodes of that, and yeah, Johnny's dad definitely seems to be more girly than before in it, at least to the few episodes I saw. Another earlier example of this would be, say, Richard Watterson from Gumball, who I mentioned earlier. And yes, he's a dumbass, but he's also a total pushover. He would never strangle Gumball for not taking out the trash like, say, Homer Simpson would to Bart. And, his wife, Nicole, she clearly wears the pants in the relationship. She's the one that will, be stern and put her foot down when need be. Richard, he can't hold water. He could barely, order Gumball to clean his room if he wanted to. And then in more modern cartoons, you have, the dad from the Loud House who bawls his eyes out basically at the drop of a hat. And I'm sure there's others too, I can't really think of any off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are others in more modern cartoons. Now, the next one I want to talk about, and this one doesn't really annoy me, it's more so just something that I've noticed, is it seems that diversity is being pushed in kids' shows a little too hard these days. And similar to the idea of TV shows, primarily shows aimed towards kids, things on Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, similarly to how they might have a stay-at-home dad who's kind of girly and, a working mom who's kind of manly, They just want to show them that, like, hey, it's normal to have this. And I think that's a similar angle that they're trying to approach with showing a lot of diversity in shows. Just being like, hey, you know, it's normal for a person to have two dads, or to have a best friend who's of a different skin color or something like that. And I understand that. However, in current day, it kind of feels like diversity in a kid's show is more a requirement, like you have to have it. And it definitely seems like diversity in kids shows in more recent years has been worked in a lot less organically, and it's a lot more phony and forced, where it's just like there's a diverse character in there and they're not actually interested in making them an interesting and complex character. They're more so just there to pander to that group of people and for good boy brownie points, where it's like, ooh, look, this kid's show has a gay character, or this kid's show has an Asian character, like, ooh, so progressive, you know? And they don't actually make this character interesting, you know? And this one doesn't necessarily annoy me per se, but it does seem a little bit maybe offensive, the way that they're just trying to pander. And it can ultimately backfire too if you don't really give this character a trait, like a defining trait outside of what their race or sexual orientation or ethnicity is. Because then it just kind of seems like, oh, so it's like this person, if all they are is their race, for instance, then first of all, that might offend people of that race, and secondly, it might give other people the wrong idea, and actually, you see, it would completely backfire. Now, of course, that's a bit of an extreme example, but it is certainly possible. You know, an example of this I think of is the Casagrandes, which recently ended on Nickelodeon. It was the Loud House, carbon copy of the Loud House, just with Mexican people. And I could barely sit through an episode of that show, mainly because it was really boring, but also because just the way that they seemed to pander to Hispanics was like very on the nose. The way they would speak Spanglish and only ever eat Hispanic foods and all this other stuff. And I think there were even instances where characters in the show that weren't Hispanic would like speak in Spanglish, and that didn't even make sense. You know, like, you know, there was like the neighbors who were like Asian and like Italian and all that, and they were like speaking in Spanglish, and it's like, what, that doesn't even make any sense. I don't know, maybe they were hanging out with the Casagrandes too much, I wouldn't really know. And the worst part about this is that the Loud House has incorporated diverse characters into its cast really well. Like, you know, on the regular Loud House, you know, Lincoln's best friend Clyde has two dads, and they're really fun characters, you know? They were worked into the show very seamlessly, and, you know, they portray the diversity they're meant to portray, and on top of that, they're interesting characters to watch on screen. So, yeah, that's just... talk about losing your touch. That's all I can say about that, I suppose. And, of course, there's other instances as well, such as... I've briefly mentioned Thomas the Tank Engine before, I believe, in my kids' show Let's Talk episode of that, where... you know, more recently, Thomas the Tank Engine has tried introducing more diverse characters, such as when they did their Big World, Big Adventures endeavor and introduced this character from Africa that was completely bland and one note and had no character to her other than, ooh, I'm a tank engine from Africa, you know, and it was just extremely off-putting. And then you have the reboot, All Engines Go, I believe it is called, which I saw an article somewhere that they recently introduced an autistic character. No doubt they got that idea from Sesame Street's Julia. Now, the thing about that is, as someone who is on the spectrum, now it's personal. As I already saw how badly Thomas and Friends butchered the implementation of the African tank engine Nia, but now they're implementing a character with autism. All I can say is, you better handle that one correctly, okay? So, now we're going to get into the TV tropes that really peeve me. So, the first one I have is when you have a character that is there for no reason other than to be crapped on. A butt monkey character, I believe the nickname or TV trope name is. Character like Squidward from SpongeBob, newer SpongeBob, or Meg from Family Guy, or You know the sorts. The character that really just exists for no other reason than apparently the entire staff of the show hates them. Let's talk about Squidward, shall we? In the early seasons of SpongeBob, he was a self-entitled grouch who really thought he was better than everyone else around him, and as such would generally act rude, both to his neighbors SpongeBob and Patrick, who generally just wanted to hang out with him, and to the people of the Krusty Krab, who, were just trying to get some food. Then, as the show progressed, he changed into more of an identifiable everyman who was just trying to get by in life, and every little thing in the world was out to get him. SpongeBob and Patrick changed from just, wanting to be friends and hang out with him, to having a stalker-like obsession with him. And at the Krusty Krab, every little thing that could go wrong for him would go wrong. Whether that be Mr. Krabs refusing to pay him for the 50,000th week in a row, or SpongeBob, dropping a vat of grease on his head because lol random. Now, of course, some people may be aware that SpongeBob there for a while was getting better. However, now it seems to be slipping back down a little bit. And I can't really speak for that era of SpongeBob, as I haven't really watched it much, but all I can say is I hope that they're getting that part of Squidward's character back on track, where he acts mean and then bad things happen to him as a result of karma. Not just bad things happen to him because he's Squidward and he deserves it, because really, no one deserves something bad to happen to them unless they've done something bad to deserve it first. That's just, how the human mind works. And of course, bad things will happen to good people in real life, but this isn't real life. This is a cartoon show. So, yeah. And of course, there are other instances as well, though Squidward is probably the most famous, because, SpongeBob is an insanely famous show. Another pretty famous show would perhaps be the Looney Tunes, not really as famous now, but was huge back in the day. You had characters like Yosemite Sam or Elmer Fudd. Now, they weren't really butt monkey characters, but they would often be tortured by Bugs Bunny. However, it was usually because they were antagonizing him or trying to shoot him with a rifle. And I believe that Yosemite Sam at one point was meant to be the replacement for Elmer Fudd because the people behind the show didn't want to make it look like Bugs Bunny was just torturing a disabled person. I believe because Elmer Fudd has a bit of a speech impediment. So I don't really know too much about that, but I figured it was worth briefly bringing up. But honestly, the worst part about these butt monkey characters is that they never get a moment to shine. All their hopes and dreams and desires only ever get brought up if it's for the other characters to crap on them. That's all it ever is. And they never really get, a moment in the sun, like Squidward, again. He had his moments in the sun in the early seasons, look at Band Geeks, where, he got to show up Squilliam when the whole town came together and performed for him at the Bubble Bowl, I think it was called. But if you look at another butt monkey character, like, say, Meg, she really hasn't had... She's had episodes to herself in Family Guy, I'm sure. I haven't watched Family Guy in forever. But, usually it's just oh, haha, it's Meg, she sucks. Peter, fart in her face, or smack her with a whip, or shoot her with a gun, because haha, it's so funny. I don't get it. I don't get the humor there. Honestly, I just wish that most of these shows would do something interesting with this character. Make them mean to deserve it, or perhaps... do an in-depth character study with them, mix it up a little. So that's something that can oftentimes annoy me. Another thing that annoys me, now this is more so in movies than in TV shows, is the death scene fake-out. This always agitates me. You always know they're not going to die. You always know, unless maybe it's a Disney movie, then maybe they're dead for real. This happens in so many movies. There's some sort of big explosion in the final fight, or big strike, or big whatever, and the main hero falls down limp, eyes closed and all that, onto the ground. The villain may or may not be cackling, and then like one of the main supporting characters will be like, no, 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 and run up to them and like, you know, like maybe flip over their carcass or like shake their head or whatever and be like, oh no, he's dead. And then they'll like start crying and there'll be like this quiet moment with either somber music playing or no music playing at all. And then, of course, the eyes will open and they'll be fine. Or maybe not fine, but, you know, not dead. And this happens in so many movies, and it just annoys me. It's been done so many times. It's been done so many times, and it's so annoying to me that even the attempts to satire it annoy me. Now, usually it's more cartoons that like try to do satirical versions of it, but even those annoy me. Because it's just like, it's not funny. It's never been funny. Even trying to poke fun at it isn't funny. Now, of course, on the rare occasion, you get the instance where a movie or a show is actually ballsy enough to kill off a character. Now, this movie's a few years old at this point, but Inside Out, they actually technically killed off Riley's imaginary friend Bing Bong. You know, when they're trying to get out of the pit of forgotten memories, he gets forgotten, you know, like he yells up to them and then just dissolves into nothingness. That was rather interesting. I remember thinking like, oh yeah, Bing Bong's gonna come back somehow, I bet, but nope, he did not. And while that was a little sad, I do think it ultimately worked in the movie's favor. And of course you have others too, like Bambi or The Lion King, you know, a lot of Disney movies. They're really one of the only movie companies that does it, and it's always one of the parents of the main character, apparently. So yeah, there is that. So yeah, that's pretty much all I got. I mean, there are others I could talk about, but this video is already approaching 18 minutes, so I don't want to make this video insanely long. But those are just some general TV tropes that annoy me. If there are any TV tropes I didn't mention here that annoy you, you can sound off in the comments if you want. So anyways, that's all from me. I will see you all in the next video.